Heaton, you are back up in D.C. How is the district?
What are the vibes?
Well, I mean, I have yet to actually do anything here. I got back Monday morning. It's now Wednesday. So I went to a movie. But other than that, and I went to a barbecue restaurant last night and saw a couple of friends. But it's like I've been in a spacesuit since I've come to Washington, D.C., because I've been so busy working on election stuff and then traveling to Austin and then to Atlanta, Georgia, that I haven't actually done anything D.C.-wise. One would assume everybody's excited about the turnover and is just really gung-ho to enter this new phase of American democracy and looking forward to meeting new neighbors from the incoming Trump administration.
We don't have this on the sheet because it broke too late in the evening, but announced last night the Department of Governmental Efficiency with a mandate of a 2-year period to reduce government and create more a bang for our buck as taxpayers. The Doge Committee, or Department rather, led by Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy. Now, obviously, the meme elements are not being hidden, indeed, accentuated by the principles involved in this. But if you were to tell libertarian types that there would be a tremendous priority being put on and there would be a lot of money and effort put on a committee to reduce elements of the government, that would be something that I have heard libertarians bring up as a thing that they would like to happen. Mr. Heaton, what say you?
Well, I don't like that it's a pun. That bit worries me a little bit, that it's like Doge and all that. But otherwise, yeah, that's great. I think every administration should have a department that looks for inefficiency. Like the onus is always on the person spending the money to prove that it's a good use of the money. It's not the other way around where we should treat the government like a credit card bill that we don't look at and it accrues all these little things, right? There should always be an emphasis on making sure that taxpayer dollars are spent well, that government programs are necessary, that they are still useful. Maybe they solve the problem that they solved. A lot of very few instances where government programs will go, we did it, wrap us up. So I think that's terrific. I wish them the absolute best in that regard. I hope that they make intelligent, smart, informed decisions and prune back the bad stuff and make the stuff that we need and want from the government work better.
Generally optimistic. Jen, you are sneering and giggling.
I'm giggling so hard because, first of all, it's an imaginary government department. It's not real. So that's funny. Also, Department of Government Efficiency has to be run by 2 people, not 1. So that's inefficient. And then also, it's just a committee. I'm actually pretty happy about this because I don't trust Elon Musk as far as I can throw him. And this will have no power because, like I said, it's an imaginary department that he's in charge of. So he can go ahead and create his little report, but Congress does the spending and it's going to be a suggestion. He has no real power. I love it. And I think it's so stupid. And actually, when you said that there was something that dropped last night, speaking of stupid, we have our new Secretary of Defense is from Fox and Friends.
Oh, yeah.
I can't stop laughing about this.
I've peed next to Pete Hegseth a number of times in the bathroom at News Corp.
It's so silly.
Well, Jen is right to laugh. The likelihood that government will actually be cut is very minimal. It's very difficult to do it, and I think if you're in the political class, you'll be just fine. You'll be just fine if you're in the political class. But I do stand by that. I think that we should always be concerned about the efficiency of taxpayer money and whether or not the government is delivering what it should. So I hope that they identify things and that Congress acts accordingly.
Vivek Ramaswamy, who now is a part of this, and I think Politico referred to a memified Simpsons Bowls committee, which is probably a fairly accurate way to actually kind of categorize it.
Yeah, committee's the right word for this.
But on Tucker Carlson's podcast, Vivek Ramaswamy said that his recommendation would be to mandate return to office for all government employees from 8 to 6. Wait for about 25% of them to quit because they've gotten used to remote work, and then just don't fill the jobs. And you've already taken a big step forward in terms of reducing federal headcount.
Sure. Nice suggestion.
Let's get to the Department of or Secretary of Defense. Obviously, this is something that will probably prove to be Donald Trump's biggest test in terms of clearance through the Senate. But he is a veteran and television personality, and one time almost killed somebody with an axe trying to throw it on Fox. Go ahead and look it up.
Yep, I saw it.
He threw it over it was like an axe throwing competition. They decided to put, I don't really blame him per se. I blame the person that decided to put a marching band behind the places where they were throwing the axes, because it went over the top and then hit a person who was on a drum line. That being
Who survived?
said,
It
he was
wasn't
fine. He was
a
fine.
massacre or anything, but it was still stupid.
I found myself, as much as this has been talked about, not all that worried, because he's the line he has to replace is somebody that doesn't go to the hospital, not tell his administration or the American public, and preside over while he's presiding over 2 hot wars and a disastrous exit from Afghanistan, and still not get fired. So if the Fox and Friends man loses a push-up contest to Vladimir Putin, I think he's probably getting fired by Donald Trump, which is more than we can say for Lloyd Austin, who has presided over, I think, a particularly ugly period at the Pentagon, up to and including a clip that we saw last night where the Pentagon was saying, yeah, we're going to have to be more transparent on how many people have died over the last 2 years, admitting that they have not been transparent with that. And also, when asked, when one of the number one topics that people are talking about in terms of foreign relations is Gaza, and specifically whether or not aid trucks are or are not getting into Gaza, and us having some level of a red line for that, at least in terms of the Netanyahu government, the Pentagon, no idea. They have no idea how many trucks are or are not getting in to Gaza. That is the official way that the Pentagon is being run now. So, look, there's a lot more underwear pictures of the incoming Secretary of Defense on the internet than there are of Lloyd Austin. It's certainly, if we're in our himbo era for the Pentagon, then we'll figure out what that is. I got a hard time saying, boy, we're going to ruin something that's going really, really well right now.
And I'll add to that, because Lloyd Austin is also the former Raytheon board member.
Yeah.
And so I did read, so this new guy, Fox and Friends, I don't know his name.
Is it Hesgith?
Pete Hegseth.
Hegseth. Well, I'm calling him Fox and Friends. He did a podcast 6 days ago and was talking a lot about how he sees things. And he did mention the military-industrial complex and how, we're funneling all these weapons to Ukraine. And he didn't mention Israel, but that is obviously a part of that. So to have the Raytheon guy basically having our foreign policy be, let's just send the products that I make money from all over the world, it's an ugly look. So even though I think it's hysterical that he picked a Fox and Friends host to be the Secretary of Defense, I'm not even going to think about this twice until the Senate confirmation, because that's going to be a pretty big hurdle for him. None of these appointments, especially ones that need Senate confirmation, I'm really thinking about until it happens.
Most of them, I don't think, at least the buzz that you've heard from Capitol Hill, will particularly face a ton of headwinds. We'll see whether or not something happens between here and there. He was the first one that's like, whoa, hold on, wait a minute. Even some people on the Republican side were wondering about it.
Lisa Murkowski was like, what?
Yeah. That being said, one of the things, Politico led their story with, I forget what the ejaculatory element of it was, but it was something like, who is this or why or something like that. But it was a blind quote from an unnamed military industrial complex lobbyist that was shitting on him. And it's like, well, congratulations. You've now just totally built up his credibility amongst not only the MAGA right, which loves him because he says the things that they want to hear on television, but also that Tulsi Gabbard, RFK, indie part that's just like, yeah, you want to know what? Is he a big dumb himbo? Maybe. Is he going to be less of a rubber stamp for just selling missiles? Is he not just going to be a missile salesman like Lloyd Austin?
I speak
Maybe.
For half of America when I say I want an ugly, unfuckable neocon to be running our Defense Department. I want somebody that I don't want to have
Liz Cheney is out of the government.
Bomb the shit out of brown countries in order to bring democracy to them.
Yeah, well, we do have the counterbalance of Marco Rubio as Secretary of State. that guy has never seen a war that he's not all in for. So there is,
And only medium fuckable by Senate standards.
you know, if I take his personality out of it, I'm gonna say Marco's pretty hot.
You would.
I think I
One
would.
on a binary scale of 1 or 0. One.
Well, I mean, we're talking senatorial standards,
Are
so
we comparing this to like Senator Kennedy? What is the spectrum here? Of,
where are we at? Hottest
hot
senator to not a senator. We're going to do all 100 here in the offseason.
Well, I mean, I think Marco makes the finals at the very least. I can't think of anyone out the top of my head.
I mean, if we're going
I wasn't prepared for this.
If we're going bisexually, then like Katie Britt's up there.
I think Marsha Blackburn is beautiful.
Yeah.
I'm
Cinema's
only
out.
attracted to personality because I'm very deep. So
Yeah.
I can't participate in
okay.
this.
But in terms of like hunks,
You would go for that little midget Bobert with those giant cans on that tiny body. Don't lie to me.
Yes, but because she loves theater, and so do I. That's why
Exactly.
I would have sex with Lauren Boebert.
yeah. Because you
Not
too would
because
like
of
to
the
vape
glorious
your
cleavage.
eyeballs out at Beetlejuice the musical. Start hooting and hollering.
That's what I do. I go for second base at Beetlejuice. That's what I do.
You got to hand it to her. She's fun.
Well, he did hand it to her.
Oh, yeah. And actually, the hottest guy for me in Congress is now going to be the Attorney General of North Carolina, Jeff Jackson. He is a fox. So
He's the YouTube man, right?
yeah, he does such a good job of informing people. I love him. He's my favorite member of Congress, and I'm sad he'll be leaving. But it's great for North Carolina. So
We're not going to talk a lot about the election results, but the one thing that has changed between when we last spoke to you and now is that it does appear that the Republicans will have the trifecta. They are going to pretty
Maybe.
much.
because Trump keeps appointing people from the House.
Well, yeah, they might not be able to do anything with it.
He's so dumb. It's so fun. This is going to be a really fun 4 years.
Yeah, they have a 3. It looks like they're going to have essentially the same majority that they had last time, which was minuscule, maybe even less. And now Elise Stefanik is going to need to have a special election.
And Mike Walls.
And Mike Walls. Now, Mike Walls, at least you're dealing with
what
a
is George
Republican
Santos
governor.
going to be in the incoming administration? What are we going to give George Santos, we think?
George Santos is
Interior?
going to be
I bet Interior.
the minister of shade.
Press secretary.
That would be fun.
You know who is lobbying apparently for it is Scott Jennings of CNN, who has been the lone conservative on that network through this cycle. He's a former Mitch McConnell guy, a former George W. Bush guy, but he has been something that Donald Trump loves, a man on television defending him and Republicans. And so he has apparently been looking to do the press secretary job. That'll be an interesting one because
I think I would like for Dave Smith to become press secretary. It would be funny.
Oh,
It
that would be so fun.
Really entertaining. Like he would. I know what I would be getting, and I would tune in. I would tune in.
He's not full of shit enough.
Well, yeah. Meghan McCain's suggestion, a now fully exonerated Tony Hinchcliffe.
Oh my God. Tony would be the best. But
Also
like
good.
seriously,
Also
so far
good.
Trump has appointed 2 people from the House.
Yes.
And apparently there's like a dozen more members of the House who think they're up for cabinet appointments. And
I
so
have heard personally of one more person who has allegedly been offered.
Yeah.
Reportedly.
so House Republicans are going to the Trump people now and be like, stop
Knock it off. Just because they all show up on television doesn't mean that they are the only people you can appoint.
Yeah.
And if you want to get shit done in the first 100 days, you are actively hampering
This
this
is
process.
Donald
So I
Trump,
love.
though. So remember, I was working for Fox Business back in 2016, and I was just watching a cavalcade of every single Fox host go down to Trump Tower to kiss the ring and meet Donald Trump. And it was not remotely clear how much of this was just goodwill with a conservative network versus, yeah, maybe the guy that operates the puppets would be pretty good for Department of Energy. Like, because he had a very low, like a very short bench last time. And so
Yes.
he was really relying on media. And now it's not clear to me if he's got a short bench or he just really likes television people and would prefer them over others.
Yeah, I had a few questions about this in my Substack chat about what is the difference between the transition. What you have to remember about the first Trump term is that he did freshly decapitate essentially a multi-decade generational line of who is next for blank. You know, if you look at administrations as machines that respawn, you could say Reagan decapitates the old conservative movement, institutes a new one. So everybody from Reagan, you essentially have the same machine through Reagan 1, Reagan 2, HW 1, then it takes a Clinton break and it comes back for W, and it pretty much ends with Trump. Trump essentially cuts off the head of that machine and reinstitutes a new order. The difference is that Trump did not have the backing of like conservative media. There, like the conservative media that existed for Trump was not exactly scholarly and wasn't like the young Republicans type. Like they had been firmly ensconced into the world of the mainstream and the establishment by that point. And so he was looking at a lot of scratch and dent people, a lot of people that were either totally feckless, and as soon as they realized that Donald Trump was winning, were the first ones to stand up and say, well, I welcome our new orange invader, for one. Or it were people that had been kicked out of the establishment for one reason or another, Mike Pence being one of them, who had gotten caught up in that gay scandal in or gay accessibility scandal in Indiana. And that's the reason why he was not you know, in line to run for president, which is what he wanted to do. He was off the scratch and dent bin. He was like, you know, gently used scandal plagued Mike Pence. He gets put in. That was a lot of the first term. What, by all reporting, Trump found out really quick is that DC will eat you alive if you have no idea what the hell's going on. Like everything that you say you want to do, DC will find a way to say, right, getting right on that, sir, and then just screw around and not do it because
I went to the post office
earlier
today here in the D.C. area, and I no longer have pants. I don't even know what happened. I got out of my car. I don't have pants now. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, and that's the thing about all these people being like so terrified of the Trump administration. We are dealing with some incompetence here. So incompetence plus the DC factor, like the people that are afraid of all these things happening all at once, like they're gonna have to pick and choose a couple of priorities. Yes. They can't do all the things.
Nobody can do everything. I do think that there are some things for which Donald Trump is very cognizant of. You are not going to see anybody at Attorney General or the head of the FBI or the CIA that Donald Trump would not trust to like shave him with a straight razor.
Mm-hmm.
Like he is going to. I think
that Greg Gutfeld will be a hell of an FBI director. I look forward to Director Gutfeld. He's a good dude. I like him. Should be fun.
So yeah, those are probably the big ones. The Department of Defense and Secretary of State. Who knows? It's interesting that he put Marco there because that is more of it shows you how much faith he has in Susie Wiles, because Susie Wiles is a Marco fan.
And for those who don't know, Susie Wiles is the chief of staff.
The chief of staff. She ran his campaign.
There's an interesting take that I've heard from a couple of people here in D.C., which is also the most cynical take on government I've ever heard, which exceeds even my cynicism on government, where I've heard a couple of people go, look, we know they're all bad, so just go with the least competent. That way, you know they're going to fuck shit up, but maybe they'll fuck up fucking shit up. And then I read a pretty good newsletter by Richard Hanania, who talked about how like he was getting into medieval and Renaissance history, and he went, the scientific revolution flourished in Protestant parts of Europe and not Catholic parts initially. And he went, it's not because they were better, it's because that the Protestants were new and they didn't have an existing institution to squelch people and set them on fire, so they just weren't as good at suppressing information. So it was the same like incompetence theory of like, look, they're both groups want to do bad stuff, but the incompetent one has more wiggle room for you to operate in.
Yeah. Well, there we go. There we go. He's meeting with Biden as we speak. Donald Trump
should be a fun conversation.
I would love to watch that conversation.
I think we can. I think it's going to be filmed.
Is it?
Parts of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I want to see the off-camera version where like he walks in and Biden's like, "Hey man, can we be friends again now that the election is over? I miss you. I miss you. Like why can't we just hang out like we used to?"
I think that they're gonna close the door and then they're just gonna say, mission accomplished. we teamed up and we got that bitch. It's like, oh, my favorite thing was, oh, I thought you were playing it real cool. And then at the end, when you called all of my supporters garbage, like, I thought everyone was going to know for sure that you were sandbagging her.
Or the speech that Biden gave, which I have to say was a very good speech about, like, hey, in America, we pass on democracy peacefully and all of that. It was a good speech. Also, he was beaming. He was beaming.
He was so happy. I know.
So happy.
Oh, my God.
I mean, it's his final fuck you to the Obama people. Like, he very much, this is all about 2016. It was all about them saying, no, it's Hillary's turn. It's Hillary's turn. You got it. You can't run. You can't run. You're going to lose. You're going to lose.
He should have ran anyway. Big puss.
That's your legacy, Joe. Yeah. That's your legacy. Jen Briney calling you a big puss. Just sit on that on Rehoboth Beach for the rest of your days.
Oh, the consultants say it's not my time, so I'm going to wait. Like, come
the pod bros were mean to me.
Yeah, I'm so mad.
From Austin, Texas, I'm Justin Robert Young.
I'm Jen Briney.
And from somewhere in Virginia,
I'm Andrew Heaton.
And we're not wrong on this edition of the program. We're going to talk about the cratering cable news, and we are going to talk about whether or not standing desks are killing you. All that, plus your emails. For the record, this is some behind-the-scenes shit. I was having problems with my printer. And so I couldn't print out the prep sheets that I normally hand to both Heaton and Jen when Heaton's in town. And Jen just repeatedly says, I don't need it. I don't need it. I don't need it. Whatever you do, I don't need it. If it's not working, I don't need it. Just stop doing it. It's fine. I don't need it. Immediately when I start, what does she do? Bewildered looks for her prep sheet.
I didn't know if I put it somewhere or if it just doesn't exist.
But no, you told me not to make one for
It's
you.
fine. I don't need it. That's why I didn't say anything. But that did just happen.
Thank you for the facts, Justin. I'm fine on my end.
Well, you're out of here, so you have your own printer. You have your own issues.
Yeah, no, that's why I said thank you for faxing it to me. Justin dutifully faxes me the spreadsheet every morning.
It's true.
And I'm ready to go.
And a joke I found from a Rush Limbaugh fax joke subgroup that we've been going back and forth on. Just golf humor between me and other boomers.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Hey, cable news is going to crater, or it is cratering currently. MSNBC's ratings since the election, which boomed during the first Trump presidency, have been dramatically slashed primetime by over 50% of its audience. Its parent company, Comcast, is now rumored to be shopping the liberal network to potential buyers. Meanwhile, and this might be something that you guys hear about by the time that you listen to it, because usually when stories like this bubble up, it means that the news is about to happen. CNN is going to be running a round of layoffs that could see top talent up to and including the priciest names on the network, Wolf Blitzer, Anderson Cooper, and Aaron Burnett, axed. We're going to start here. Heaton, why is the reaction to this election different than 2016 when viewers flocked to these networks to hear more and more about the incoming Trump administration?
So we're in phase 3 is the answer to that question of the president on cable television news phenomenon. So when I was working at Fox Business prior to the election of Donald Trump, the prevailing wisdom was, this is a Fox person talking, don't say this very loudly, don't say this outside of the network, but we do better when Democrats are in office because people tune in when we're an oppositional network. If a Republican's in office, we don't have anybody to be mad at. People get kind of bored, they leave. But when there's a Democrat in office, we do really well. And then Trump got elected, and that went out the window. Fox did gangbusters under Trump, and so did every other network under Trump. He became the ringleader of American circus newsotainment on every network, whether you were the oppositional network or you were the elated network. Now he has been elected again, and we're seeing a cratering in CNN. I think MSNBC is up, if I'm not mistaken. Did it not increase, or is it just CNN?
I think it's way down.
No, MSNBC is down. That's the story here. Is that MSNBC?
Down? Okay.
Yeah.
To the
I'm
point that they
sorry,
might sell it.
Yeah.
Yeah, my bad. I thought that, okay, I misread something. That MSNBC did better than CNN on election night. Maybe that was it.
Oh, yes. No.
Either way, I think,
On election night, you are correct. Half the audience of Fox News went to go watch MSNBC because they'd been watching compilations of meltdowns of liberals for the past 8 years, and they wanted to see one live on television.
Right. Okay, great. Thank you. Yes. Overall, Fox is doing very well. I suspect Fox will continue to do well until it implodes for demographic reasons. With CNN and MSNBC, my best guess is that people are just finally exhausted, that there were 4 years under Donald Trump where everybody felt I should say everybody that was an anti-Trump progressive or just kind of the whole CNN audience of people across the political spectrum felt inclined to tune in and watch what was going on and get angry and oppose it. And I think people are just running on E. I think that there's been a general energetic collapse in terms of Trump coming back in, where I don't think people are going to want to stay glued to the television on a daily basis for another 4 years, seeing that Pete Hegseth, our Secretary of Defense, forgot that Wallonia is not actually, or is a part of Belgium or whatever. I think it's exhausting.
But does have cum gutters.
We've had the full arc of Trump being something that you cannot take your eyes off of to I don't want to watch this, and I think that's what happened. And Fox will. Frankly, I'm kind of mystified that Fox has done so well, because it makes sense to me that they do better as an oppositional network, but that was not the case. And I think that they will basically do well until their demo ages out and nobody switches over to digital, and then I think it'll.
Or until Trump hires all of them for his administration.
Yes.
There's no one left because they're all running the world.
Jen,
all
why
the interns get promoted to being on-air talent?
why are these networks not doing as well as they did in 2016?
I think the fact that they bullshitted us the first time that Trump was in office has a big role in that to play. I think even the most hardcore MSNBC and CNN watcher knows that they were told for 2 years that this man was a Russian agent. And then the reports came out and they were waiting on pins and needles. They had memorized like all the different players. And then the report said, nope, never happened.
Yeah.
I think
so. Maddow tracking oligarch yachts to see where the secret meetings were held at Mar-a-Lago maybe eroded the trust that they had in their network.
Yeah, perhaps a little bit.
Perhaps.
Yeah. So, I mean, I know that during the first Trump administration, I tended to have my TV on because I was curious, what is this going to look like? And I was nervous because it was going to be so different. This time it's not all that different, and I don't trust these sources. So what I did the last couple of days, and like Andrew's also absolutely right, because I think a lot of us are just tuning it out. From now until January 20th, I told my audience on Congressional Dish, don't listen to any of it. There's no point. They don't have any real power. They have some like soft power because they're the incoming administration, but they have no power. Take the holidays off. You don't need to know any of this stuff. You don't need to know about the appointments until they're actually confirmed. Like, we just don't need to know and hang on every detail. It's not healthy, I don't think, to do so. And I think a lot of people are taking that break. But on the other hand, I think when it comes to getting information about these people, I am not going to be going to the same people who led me astray the first time.
So you would say in the administration, the previous Trump administration, not even just this election, because that's what some people I've heard is that, like, wait a minute, these are the same networks that kept telling me victory was within the grasp, and they have Michael Moore and James Carville on talking about how this is going to be a very sure Kamala victory. That it is probably a combination of both, but what comes to your mind is how they handled the first administration.
That's a very good point, because yes, I am upset how they reported the news in the first administration, and then when it comes to the election, the fact that they were predicting the future and calling it news, that's not news. And so I am afraid that the next 2 years with these networks, it's going to be more of the same. People telling you this is what's going to happen as if they can predict the future. I think news is supposed to be this is what's happening now and this is what has just happened. And they seem to have gotten that confused. Now it's panels of pundits that are giving opinions about stuff that's not news. So I think just fundamentally people who are trying to be informed, like when I wanted to know about this new Secretary of Defense kid, I was really interested in reading every bit of that thread where someone had listened to the podcast episode that he was on and pulled his actual quotes.
Yeah.
I'm going to look for times where these people are the primary source in my information about them. Because as you said it on the last episode, when people were finding out about J.D. Vance, he had this reputation as a weirdo, a couch fucker, and then he goes on Rogan and people hear him for themselves and go, oh, wait, this guy's just a dude. So I think we're all just looking for the raw information at this point, because the people that we trusted on these cable news networks to aggregate and summarize the information for us have done us such a disservice over the last 12 years that I'm done with them.
Heaton?
Or 8 years.
Great. I agree with all of that. Jen, I'm delighted that you say that. As somebody that has worked in cable television news, I don't watch it. And I still have friends in it. And there are very smart people that work in cable television news, but the medium itself is stupid. I'm not saying the people in it necessarily are, although there's a lot of very stupid people in cable television news as well. Like, there are smart people, but it's a dumb format. It's
Yes.
on this show, we can have a topic that we decide to extend by 40 minutes. If we feel that if the topic needs it and we've not really got into it enough, we're able to explore things with nuance. Cable television is extremely frustrating when it comes to being substantive and being nuanced. It's constrained by the time slots, where longest stretch that we had on the show I worked on was 8 minutes with 4 people usually on camera, which breaks down to 2 minutes of talk time. Try talking about Gaza and Israel in a 2-minute soundbite, which is exactly what you will do, by the way, is you will come up with a soundbite because you've got 2 minutes to talk. You're not going to have a really good conversation. And then just the nature of it is, because you've got a limited amount of time and a limited amount of attention, and you're dealing with a very broad audience that has varying levels of information and intelligence, you want to make it as reductive as possible, so you're constantly boiling it down into yes or no, blue or red, when a lot of issues are more complicated than that and have perhaps 3 viewpoints or more. And then the final thing is, you never have the ability on cable television ever, under any circumstance to go, hey, gang, we just don't fucking know. Tune back in next week. Maybe we'll have some details there. You know what? Nothing happened today. There was some stuff that happened in another country that was kind of interesting, but I don't think this audience will care, to be honest with you. So we're just going to take a mulligan today. Go spend time with your families. Like, at least on our podcast, we can go, we're fucking exhausted. We're going to talk about, should there be a naked airline? But we'll be upfront with you about it.
Yeah.
We'll be like, we're tired of talking about this shit. And we'll go in a different direction.
Yeah.
But you can't. In cable television news, you always have to act. You always have to act as though tonight is the Walter Cronkite broadcast in which Kennedy was shot. Like, don't leave. Don't tune away. And you have to do it hour after hour for 24 hours a day, where every subsequent broadcast has to now pretend that they have a different angle and new information that you need to keep watching. And the reality is that you could just read The Week. Every week, you get a really, really good spread of news and opinions, and then listen to our show and all of our aggregate shows. And that should take up all the information you need. Give me money.
The only thing I'm going to disagree with you on in that analysis is you're saying that they have to do these things. They don't have to do these things. These are choices. And because they all do them, they seem to think that that's the formula that needs to be followed. It's a choice. They have 24 hours of time to fill. They can fill it in any manner they want to. But this is the recipe that they have decided on. But like, they could change it if they wanted to.
Well, I mean, I in defense of cable
I
news,
would say they are
please,
terrified
please.
of losing eyeballs.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. There is a history. There is a way. There's an orthodoxy of how this kind of goes, and that you stray from it at your peril. Which brings us to what I think is the most exciting question here. Since these outlets might be sold on the cheap, and Comcast is looking to unload this thing, we could all get our money together. We could buy MSNBC. We could do whatever we wanted with it. I'm sure CNN. I mean, David Zaslav at Discovery. Warner Brothers Discovery is probably looking to sell CNN too. So we could get either of these networks. What would you do with them? And I mean programming. Jen, we're going to start with you.
Oh, I love this question. So what I would do is have a maximum of 3 hours a day of like, this is the news of the day that they currently do now. I would have an hour in the morning, an hour midday, an hour in prime time, unless there's some kind of actual breaking news. Because right now everything's breaking news. Like, that's not the case. But if there's a mass shooting or something or a hurricane or whatever, then
wall to wall.
Yeah, wall to wall when you have to. But the 24-hour, that's just not working. And then in the other hours, they're deciding what we're going to care about, where I feel like it's their job to give us the information and we decide whether or not we care. And we are the most powerful country in the world. So I would like to know more about the world and about our own government. So I would do an hour a day. I mean, me and a part-time research assistant are able to pull together a documentary every 2 weeks. So with more resources, they could do every day. This is what happened in Congress. And on the days that Congress isn't in session, there are 25 hearings in a day when they are in session that they could be covering and telling you the issue. And these are the players and this is the testimony. They could absolutely do that. We could have an hour about the United Nations. We could have an hour about what's going on in the World Trade Organization. We could have an hour about what's going on in Europe, Africa, Mexico, Canada, our neighbors. We could decide to cover
be the BBC.
Kind of, yeah. And have basically documentaries where you can turn it on and learn something about your world every day. And I would pretty much ban all coverage of polls and this is what's going to happen in the future until right before an election. I would allow it for maybe a month, but I would get rid of the punditry entirely. It would be all about, this is the news. This is what happened. This is the nuance that you need. This is the details that you need. And each hour would allow that to happen. So it's like where there would be guests, they would be expert interviews.
Gotcha.
But pundits would be fired entirely.
Cool. So you'd run it to the ground. Heaton, go ahead.
You're so cynical. I would watch that channel all day, every day.
I know you would. I know that in your heart, in the Jen Briney heart, and I know that you are pure of your intentions, you desperately just want to turn it into an American BBC plus C-SPAN that has so much more nutritious content that is not the car crash element of it. I don't know if that is what television is built for, but I know that you would love it.
Yeah, but the thing is that the recipe that we're saying is what you have to do to make it work
is also failing
fucking
horribly.
hemorrhaging.
Yeah.
So try my way.
You want to know what? You can't argue. Heaton.
So before I give you my lineup of programs, which are amazing and which I should absolutely be made a president of programming for tomorrow, I would like to stress that much of my career is taking complex and substantive issues, being able to distill them and explain them in an approachable manner in a short amount of time, and make them entertaining. So that's the core of what I'm trying to do. For everybody that was enchanted with the BBC model, I want to note that first. So, news done by puppets. There would be puppet news that would kick off the day on my network. Substantive news, mind you, but puppets are doing it. I think puppets are inherently funny. I will tell you why. Puppets, are you following so far? Puppets look like people.
Yes, crankacres of news.
Yeah.
But they are not people. That's what makes them so funny. Next, we're gonna have
Whoa. Hold on.
Yeah.
There's a lot more to puppets. What are we talking? Marionettes? We talking like Muppet style?
No,
like where are we going?
Imagine kind of like
okay.
Muppets. Picture Muppets.
Okay.
No.
Muppets.
Hey, we're gonna have a budget. We're not gonna do like little sock puppet type things. We're gonna they're Muppets basically, right?
So
no
Syphil and Ollie. We're looking more Muppet Show than we are Team America or anything like that. Okay.
Yes, exactly. Thank you. Picture Felt. Picture Kermit.
We're going Felt.
Okay.
We're going Felt. Please
next,
continue.
We will have actual, substantive, hard-hitting news, which is done naked. We will have naked news. And because it's naked, people will watch it. And that's the sugar that's able to get people the carrots that they so desperately want to do. But that's not even what I'm excited about. I'm not even excited about the basic news. Frankly, I think the basic news can be covered better by magazines anyway and by podcasting. We're really just doing both of those things in order to have fodder for the things I'm really excited about, which is political satire. So we would have a daily funny news program like The Daily Show. We would have a weekly explainer program like Last Week Tonight with John Oliver. And I've been trying to think how to do a foreign news program, which is difficult. One of the things that we discovered, or I discovered working in cable television, is Americans just don't like foreign news as much as we like domestic news.
We don't care. We
And it,
really don't give a shit.
And I do not argue that we ought to care more about global news, but the sad truth is we do not care about global news as much, which is why I would have a funny global news show with puppets. That's right, folks. There would be 2 puppet shows on my program, and the puppets would be doing foreign news, but it would be funny news, right? So we would do like a funny story, and then we would do a substantive story. It would teeter-totter back and forth so that you got some amount of substantive. This is what happened to Germany this week. The chancellor got knocked out, and they're forming a coalitional government. But the next one would be about how a horse got stuck in a tunnel in Belgium. So we would go back and forth on that. We would have a debate show that would be Oxford-style format, where we'd have people come on and do arguing debate topics. That would probably be the most serious thing in the entire bit, because I don't even have a comedy bit. However, there would be a musical comedy show that would happen once a week where they would take news of the day and put music to it, a la Mark Russell. And I'm thinking that there would be a news program called News from Earth, where the entire thing is about American and global news, but it's all aliens that are doing it. So the people that are on camera are all aliens in alien costumes. And the gimmick, if you see, is that they're interpreting the news from an outsider perspective, which, again, makes it more palatable and entertaining to watch. Final program I would do that I came up with while I was getting pantsed at the post office earlier today is called Just One Lie. That's the name of that show, Just One Lie. Here's how this works. Regular news programming, and they keep their clothes on. So for those of you that freaked out that I'm not puritanical enough to make everybody wear clothes all the time on national television, everybody's fully clothed in Just One Lie, and the stories are all real except for one. One of the stories is fake. We don't tell you till the end of the program which one is fake. Why do I do this? Because I think media literacy and spotting disinformation is important. And so we're going to make it fun. And we'll have regular news, and one of them's going to be bullshit. And the whole time, you, the viewer, are watching this going, which one's bullshit? I think this one's bullshit, because I want to train you to think that way all the time. Welcome to the Heaton News Network.
Here's how you know that Andrew Heaton is talent, is that he just came up with 10 different concepts that he could star in.
I know. I really did. I was like, these are what I want to be in. I did
10
forget
different pitches that he would have to a cable news network that is in decline. I love it.
I did forget my favorite show on my network, which would be The Weather Hour, where you just see the most extreme weather that has happened on Earth that day, and it's just like basically disaster porn.
HD disaster porn.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I
like it.
Yeah. I wouldn't call it The Weather Hour, though. I would give it a different title. But I
Well,
like the
yeah.
disaster porn
No,
stuff.
he would call it
Disaster porn.
Mr. Heaton Splish Splosh moment. Like,
No, that's the other naked news that we're going to have after hours. I think calling it disaster porn is actually a pretty good.
all right. Here's what television is good for. Live pictures, or exciting pictures that you would not otherwise see in real time. That is why CNN got its it became a thing that was culturally relevant. Not because they had the best political pundits yelling at each other, but because they were in the Iraq War in a pre-internet age or Desert Storm, where you could see, like, oh my God, it looks like all this stuff is happening. It's being brought to me so quickly and so fast. Now, in a lot of ways, the internet has taken away the novelty of that. But I think the lesson that television learned from that was the wrong one, which is that, oh, we can't do that. We're not special in that anymore. No, if you have a budget, you should still be able to do it better than random people on the internet. If you have a sense, like Vice did back in the aughts, and you said, oh, let's send somebody into North Korea. Let's send somebody into these interesting places. Let's understand the cartels better. Let's understand, like, instead of just doing one stand-up on the border, let's go to Juarez. Let's literally put people in there. Let's have a actual embed with one of these caravans that's coming up here. Let's hear the stories, because it doesn't take long to scratch the surface to understand that we have an interesting world. You can bring it to life. I would put a priority on that. And then I would understand what the rest of television is for. Car crashes, human car crashes. There's a show on CNN right now that's about 10% away from being perfect. They have a show that's a panel show late at night, where it's just nobody's, like on a set where they're all looking at the televisions. They're all at a glass table and they're looking at each other and they get super yelly and screamy with each other. And it just escalates into these very uncomfortable places. The problem that makes it perfect is two things. Number one, they always have one conservative with four liberals, so it always just winds up being the liberals ganging up on the one conservative. And not to say that that should or shouldn't happen, it just means that it's boring because the same thing always the dynamic winds up happening over and over and over again. And two, in the moment where they could have achieved greatness, they walked away. It was on this show that Mehdi Hasan and Ryan James Gadursky got into an argument in which Mehdi Hasan said, "Oh, are you calling me an anti-Semite?" And Ryan James Gadursky said, "I hope your beeper doesn't go off." And they wound up pulling it away like it was the worst thing possible. And then Ryan James Gadursky got banned from the network and Mehdi Hasan stormed out of the studio. And that was that. What they fundamentally misunderstood is that that moment is the point of television. That moment, if you're going to have a bunch of people yell at each other, then it needs to get weird and uncomfortable and possibly racist. This is full Jerry Springer car crash television. That is what we want. If you are doing everything up to that and then pretending you have modesty of like, oh no, we can't bear to, shut up. This is why people want to tune in. So you do full car crash television. I want people's yelling, screaming. If they get into a fight, start pushing the furniture away. See if they'll actually throw hands. If Mehdi Hasan is storming out of the out of CNN studios and ripping off his lavalier, follow his ass until he gets down to the street. Like, that's what actually people want to watch. It's actually what will draw eyeballs. And the problem that they have now is they have a G-rated version of what should be a PG-13 to R-rated product of people yelling at each other. If you're going to bring punditry, then let them bring punditry to a point where they are actually hurting each other's feelings and screaming at each other. I'd be bringing in Twitch streamers that barely have any kind of media literacy. I'd be bringing in people off the streets that want to scream and yell. This is what I would do. Drive it down to the absolute lowest common denominator, because guess what? That's why television exists. It's not a medium for refined thought. It's not a medium for enrichment. It is a medium that is essentially the same thing as the little toy that I put in front of my infant daughter's face when I squeeze it and it makes a crinkling noise. It scratches a part of our animal brains that we just want more of. Give the people what they want. Jerry Springer.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Justin, this makes me
now
wanna have
you
one more
understand
program
why
called
my producer
Free Drink-
here loves to make me cry.
All right, that's mean.
Justin, this makes me have one more idea for Heat and News Network called 3-Drink Minimum. The rules are you can only be on 3-drink minimum if you've been canceled on another network. Step one.
Yep.
Step two, you have 3 drinks before the show starts, and then after that, just drink however much you want. And it's a
I
pop
think
show.
I would love it if they got so mean with each other that the only way that you could leave the show is if you did storm out, and then at that point, like a penalty box, we bring somebody back that's previously been banned from the show. It's like Mehdi Hasan storms out. Who's going to replace him? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. It's Milo Yiannopoulos. He's back. We have a bunch of smoke coming out, and now all of a sudden he just returns back to the show. I don't know. I genuinely believe that it should be absolutely trash television. Or if you want to bring back a long form interviews like we used to have in the 60s and 70s, you do that. So you do actually have a good conversation that has 2 or 3 big commercial breaks, but you do it exactly like you did in the 60s and 70s. They're smoking and drinking on set.
I
like that.
hate your channel. I hate it so much.
Yes. No, I'm designed. If you believe that cable news should be BBC and C-SPAN, then yes, you are going to hate my channel. But guess what? There's more of us than there are of you. And we will sell gold bars better than any cable network in history.
I don't think it has to be BBC. I don't think BBC does a good job of what I'm saying, because I can promise you there's so many fascinating things going on in the world, and you could make interesting documentaries about them. Like the Supreme Court cases. We have Supreme Court cases that decide so many important things in our lives. I don't know anything about them until it's like, oh, that case that's been going on for the last 5 years that you haven't heard of, it just decided that you can't get an abortion anymore. And it's like, we don't see these things coming because we are not told about them. And I think people would care.
Television's not the place for it.
It is, though, because with the visuals, I just think it helps you understand things better. Documentaries is half of Netflix for a reason. We're into it. They have
Netflix.
Yeah, but we have the potential with 24 hours in a day to basically hire people to do documentaries if you're not paying millions of dollars to idiots to scream at each other. Like, there is the potential for good videographers
we agree.
and reporters.
The way that they have idiots screaming at each other is bad. We just disagree on how we want to fix it.
you want to have
I think you're right. I think Jen is absolutely right with a sufficient amount of tits and puppets. If you have naked people and puppets, I think it's possible Jen's network could float. But you do need a lot of nudity, comedy, and puppets.
All right. So Saudi Wealth Fund. You know where we presented 3 different possibilities of the future for CNN or MSNBC. Just go ahead and contact us. I'll forward to the appropriate person that you want to run the new network, but I will take your blood oil money and make everybody scream at each other on CNN all night.
Although, honestly, it sounds like the 3 of us together, if we each got 8 hours, could have one hell of a channel. I think it would be perfect.
Oh, here's another idea. This is actually one I think is a really good idea. So you take a proven television concept, live PD. You ever see live PD?
Like,
No.
Cops?
It was a version of Cops. It might still be a version of Cops that also traffics in entrapment and is like morally wrong. But it's live, and so it's following around cops, and so you have one dude in an area. It's like, tonight we're tracking police officers in these 3 cities, and we're gonna see. And so you watch them. It's a live camera crew as these cops are interacting with all these various calls. Blah blah blah. It's hilariously corrupt and set up like most television. That being said, I do believe that you could do an hour in the middle of the day where you just had everybody scrambling around on Capitol Hill. These things happen all the time. If you did them live and just said like, all right, today, now we'd lead with Hegseth or whatever, like we're going to send our 4 people around and we're going to, and you're going to just watch the camera like scurrying through the halls of Congress as they try to pin down these people and shout their questions. I think that would be compelling. You would take what would otherwise be annoying little tidbits and at least make it visually interesting.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
There we go. All right. Patreon.com/We're Not Wrong. This week we're going to be talking about Kamala Harris's $1 billion campaign receipts. She spent $1 billion in 4 months, and we don't know right now. The best that anybody can guess is that they are only $20 million in debt. But we don't know because they're still raising money. They're still trying to sell your phone numbers to anybody who will buy them so they can make money on them. And they still have vendor receipts.
One time I bought an Obama mug in 2009, and I'm still, it's like Persephone eating the seeds and going to Hades 6 months a year forever. That one fucking mug has forever put my email and texts on these chains.
The Republicans nor the Democrats have my phone number to this day.
Oh, good for you.
I have avoided them.
Good for you.
I'm proud.
Anyway, we'll be talking about that.
And Act Blue, those annoying bastards.
Apparently, the reporting is that Kamala Harris paid Beyonce $15 million to not sing.
To not sing at the dance? Wait, what?
We'll talk about it. We'll talk about it on the Patreon.
Okay, yeah, you need to tell me more.
Keep It in Your Pants would be a great name for a naked news show. Keep It in Your Pants.
Okay.
But now, for everybody that has redlined on this show about politics, we're going to take a little break and talk about how standing desks are killing you. The global standing desk market is projected to reach $12.6 billion by 2023, and it is growing from beliefs that prolonged sitting harms health. However, recent research suggests that standing isn't an ideal remedy, as excessive standing can raise risks for circulatory issues like varicose veins. A large Australian study with over 83,000 participants found that long periods of standing or sitting can elevate heart disease risks. Instead, regular movement, including walking, stretching, and alternating between sitting and standing, offers greater health benefits. Sit-stand desks and incorporating short activity breaks into routines are more effective solutions than just standing all the time. Jen, do you have a standing desk? And if so, why are you courting death?
So I do have one. It's like an IKEA one that I have to crank for it to go up. And the only reason I have it is I find that when I record at my desk, if I'm standing, I just sound better. So that's why I got it. But I've actually been a standing desk truther standing death. Exactly. Because I called bullshit on this a long time ago.
Really?
Yes. Like 10 years ago, I went on a rampage about standing desks, that this was just like a corporate scheme to keep people at their desks all the time.
Oh.
Yeah, because like a friend of mine got a very expensive standing desk, telling me that he was doing it for his health. And so he's standing there like doing his work. And I was like, this is bullshit. Like, this can't be any healthier than sitting down, because you're still doing nothing. You're not exercising. But if you were to actually exercise, you would have to walk away from the screen. And so by telling you that this is healthier than sitting all day, which I don't believe it is, I think you're just being suckered into just working all the time so that you're staying at your screen and like kidding yourself that this is any healthier. So he called me a conspiracy theorist, and we like laughed about it and moved on. But I was right.
The Australians
it's a lie.
proved you right.
It makes no sense. Like, you're supposed to move your body, and whether your knees are, extended or they're not, like, that doesn't. It's still not movement.
Yeah.
So I'm not surprised by this, and I feel vindicated, and I also hate standing. So now anyone that tells me like, "Oh, you should get a standing desk," I can tell them, "Fuck off." The Australians proved me right. Yeah, standing's the worst, man. It hurts.
Heaton?
I have had multiple standing desks. However,
you would.
I want to bag into this. I do think it's a corporate conspiracy, but I think the corporate conspiracy is not corporations tricking people into working more. I think it's a corporate conspiracy from standing desk corporations tricking people into purchasing standing desks. And I say this because whenever a study comes out,
big desk.
Whenever a study comes out that is like you'll read a study that's like, did you know that you're 8 times more likely to get coffee than if you drink tea? And you'll like actually click on the link and open it up, and it's clearly a bullshit study where they had like 8 people in it. That's way below the level of statistical analysis you would need, and it's funded by the Tea Drinkers of America Association or some shit like that. So I buy that in the same way that. Or do you guys remember, like, when we were in high school, resveratrol was the big thing? Do you recall that like, red wine is super good for you? Do you remember this period?
Oh, where, it sounded like a date rape drug.
Would go, the thing back in the day was the Gallic question. Why is it that French people are skinnier than American people, even though their diets have more fat in them? The answer is resveratrol. It's red wine. And they would come out with these studies and go, look, people that drink red wine live longer than, and then you'd actually look into the study and it would go, people that drink plastic jug vodka. And I, as I slowly became scientifically literate, would look at that and go, is it possible people that have a Merlot collection have better health care than people that drink plastic jug vodka? Is it possible
there you go.
that the red wine is correlated with income and it's not the red wine itself? So that's my take on the conspiracy element. No, I've had multiple standing desks, but in my case, it was for health purposes, but it was to deal with a health problem rather than trying to avoid pooling blood or whatever the issue was. I had chronic pain issues for about a decade. It hurt to sit. I had pudendal neuropathy, for anybody listening that might suffer from something similar. It really sucked. I just couldn't sit. Like, there was about a year where if I went to a movie theater and sat down in a movie, it felt like I was having ice picks shoved into me for just every few minutes for an hour or two. It was very difficult to concentrate. And I was able to avoid that if I was standing. So when I was at Fox Business, I told HR, I have this medical condition that makes it very difficult for me to sit. Could I please get a standing desk? And they said, no, you can pay for that out of your own pocket. So I snuck into Bill O'Reilly's office and stole all of his fucking paper, like all the boxes of paper, and I built my own standing desk using pilfered paper and did that. And then I have like a little desktop type thing that raises up, probably similar to Jen's IKEA model. And I had it, but I rarely use it because I'm too lazy. But I think I've got something even better, though. If the issue, and it seems to be at least what the story indicates, the issue is not whether you're sitting or whether you're standing, it's whether you're moving a lot. I got this thing called a dog, which I have been very, very fortunate to get in terms of moving, because I'll work for a couple hours, then Wallace will come in and be like, hey,
Yeah.
we're fucking playing now. This is bullshit. Let's go outside. And so, yeah, that's my new thing.
I have a standing desk. It was free because Twitch bought a ton of them and then locked down for the pandemic, and then nobody came back into the office, and so they were looking to clear out desks, and they were giving them away, and so I got one. I will say that in times where I have spent a lot of time on one desk, it is nice to be able to alternate between the two. But I would agree that if the study's kind of bullshit, because it's like, if you stand all the time, it is not great for you. And it's like, sure. I don't know how many people were doing that. How many people were like, sitting is the enemy. No one should ever sit.
I think a lot were. Like back, I'm going to say about 10 years ago, that was a thing where people were like, "Oh, this is so much help." And
Never
standing all day. Yeah.
Well, sure,
Yeah.
yes, but I mean, like, and I do think that sitting is the new cigarettes. We should be able to have 1 or 2 hours worth a day. Like, you should be able to. You mean, like, I don't know. Alternating is the key. I guess I never grokked the idea that the concept would be, we'll never sit down, because then the desk wouldn't be adjusting. It would just be
Up all the time.
Desk.
Yeah. Up all the time.
I bet you it's probably good for your sperm count, though, because sperm count is reduced by heat. So if you're sitting all the time, the reflective heat would go into your testicles. So my guess is, because you know what, this is my theory on why there's been declining sperm count numbers globally.
Laptop?
As we become more of a service-based economy in the developed world. Not the laptop, just the fact that people are seated in chairs all the time, and so there's heat that's
thigh
being
heat,
trapped there, that's
cooking
reducing
those eggs.
Thigh heat, ball heat getting reflected back. So if you're trying to knock somebody up, a standing desk probably makes sense, is what I'm saying. But still, move around. It'll be good. It'll be good for you and your circulation, and you'll be more limber for the fucking.
And wear a tunic.
We need to ask the Australians to study that next.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Did I ever tell you guys how I got in a fight with Santa Claus over him stealing my stool? Because I hate standing so much.
Please go and define stool.
So it was, an actual, it was like a bar stool. This was back when I was working in Waikiki. My job was to grab tourists off the street, sell them activities, and tell them, like, hey, if you want all this stuff for free, go up to this essentially timeshare presentation, and I'll get you your activities. And so in order to do that job, I had a booth out on Kalakaua Boulevard, and there was this guy, Santa Claus, that was out there, and he would steal...
Like a real dressed as Santa Claus, or just a fat dude with a beard that people call Santa Claus?
No, like the jolly old Saint Nick dressed in the whole thing.
Yeah,
and even though it was winter, it's still 85 degrees out.
It's
so
Waikiki.
he's gross and he's smelly and he's Santa, and kids are taking pictures with him. And it's like, okay, fine. But this Santa Claus used to steal the one stool that we had. So there was already issues with those of us that worked at the booth, because there was 2 people, 1 stool. And then when Santa Claus goes over there and takes the stool, no one wants to be the one who's over there yelling at Santa Claus. But I didn't want to stand all day, because I would be out there sometimes for 8 hours a day. And so there was just this one day that I saw his fat ass walking over towards my stool, and there's maybe 20 children around. There's a ton of people out there. And I ran over and started yelling at Santa Claus, saying, "That's my stool. Get away from my stool." And he's like, "But I've been standing all day." And I'm like, "Yeah, that's your problem. Go somewhere else where there's a bench."
Buy another stool.
Yeah, well, it was provided by my company. So that would, there was a giant international market thing. So he didn't have.
But wait, was he from your company?
No, he's just some random fucking
then he's
Santa
allowed
Claus.
to go buy another stool and sit in it.
Sorta. In this market, you had to have a
stall.
Like a little. It was like a little booth. It was just a bunch. It was underneath a giant tree.
Was he there just illegally?
He was just out on the street. He was like a sidewalk. So we had a bunch of these clowns. So there was this one guy. This guy actually made over $200,000 a year. I respected the shit out of him. But he had 2 parrots. And so he would charge people $20 to take a picture with his parrots, and he would just collect $20 all day long. And so he made over $200,000. He looked like a pirate. You would be kind of afraid because he looked a little sketchy, but he was actually a really good dude. So we liked the pirate man. Yeah. Then there was another guy who I'm actually really concerned about. We called him the Tin Man, and he would paint his entire body silver.
Ooh.
And so he was out there sweating with that paint on all day. And so he would also take pictures with kids. And so there were just like these weird people. Oh, and then there was one. The guy had trained his animals, so he had a dog, a cat, and a rat. And so the dog would lay on the bottom of the pyramid, and then it would be the cat, and then it was the rat, and they would just lay there all day. And people were so amazed by this that he made money too. And so Santa Claus was just one of these fucking people, and we couldn't tell them, like, you're not allowed on the sidewalk, but you're certainly not allowed to take my stool.
Yeah.
And because the rest of my coworkers didn't want to be seen yelling at a Santa Claus, they let him get away with it, and I got in a fight with Santa Claus, and from that moment forward, he called me the bitch. He wasn't wrong, but he never took my stool when I was working again, so.
There we go.
Yeah.
Peace through strength. You're going to be named to the Trump administration.
Yep.
We're not wrong pod at gmail.com. Just named to the Trump cabinet. That was my joke in this too. We're not wrong pod at gmail.com. Where's Poochie writes, by the way, there is a ranked choice vote off happening right now in the Pine Tree state of Maine that will determine the spread of what the Republican majority is. It is right now the tightest Democratic lead, according to the New York Times tracker. And where is Mr. Heaton, the alternate delegate for Maine at the RNC?
Well, technically, I was alternate junior associate delegate for Maine at the RNC. So there's a long line of succession before I get called in to weigh in on Maine politics. But I am happy to note that, at least according to an email Justin forwarded to me, I did receive one vote for vice president in the last election, meaning that my attempt to bring back the Whig Party persists. And we will come at the current rate, in 400 years, we'll be up to 50 votes.
I would also like to congratulate the citizens of Colorado, Idaho, Nevada, and Oregon, brave patriots who rejected the communist ranked choice voter menace this election day.
I am confused by that. Why would people do that?
Because it's stupid.
It's not.
It is. Well, I mean, I don't know. Talk to the voters.
I think the answer is because both political parties freaked the fuck out because they realized that they would lose some power. And they
Was there a
realized that
fear campaign?
Or it's just a way to
you guys
complicate
are
your ballot
shitbag
that doesn't
than it is
change
to
shit.
Run on why you should vote for me.
Yeah. Or yes, because that's what happens in New York City. That's what happens in San Francisco. That's what happens where all these ranked choice voting things are. It doesn't. It doesn't change anything.
I loved ranked choice voting when we voted for Oakland mayor.
Yeah, but did it do any of the things that all the RCV advocates say it's going to do? No.
I don't know.
What it doesn't do, what it's not a panacea for, is getting third parties in. So if you're a libertarian or a green, you're probably still not going to see anything happen to you in terms of actually getting to elected office. What it does do is allow for you to have more consensus candidates within the two parties. So rather than having a plurality vote where of the 5 candidates, 15% like one person, and therefore that guy gets in, and actually the majority of voters don't like him. With ranked choice voting, you end up getting a broadly palatable candidate where there's a consensus of like, yeah,
on paper,
my favorite's this person, but my second favorite's this one.
On paper.
I know you weren't traveling this year like you have in the past, but were you dialed in on any of the information about these ballot initiatives? Like, was there a fear campaign, or was it just okay?
No idea.
I'd be curious to know.
I mostly just want to take the anti-RCV argument just to needle Heaton.
I know,
just to
yes.
Well, because everybody talks about it. Yeah,
it deflated me as those election results were coming in, and that's something that I've been saying for the last 4 years. You know, I'm actually pretty optimistic about electoral reform, and I could go through and go, Maine, New York City, Alaska, and Alaska might be getting rid of theirs, which I thought was the best system.
That one's getting closer though.
Jen, I don't know what the actual substance was of the counterposition. I should look into this. I'll note, I discovered this, the ranked choice voting lost on all of these ballots through the Wall Street Journal, which just had a really snide celebratory article. It didn't explain why it was good. It just said the gimmick known as ranked choice voting has been defeated. That was it. It was just gimmick, and there was nothing else in there about why it was a good development. We all agree it's stupid.
Yeah, if we have any listeners in those states, I'd be curious to know what your perception was of the run up to those ballot initiatives, because I think it's just when I explain it to people, it seems like most people seem to think it's a good idea. So it's kind of surprising that 4 states.
Why did you reject complicating your ballot for no fucking reason?
Comes from the Jerry Springer of news production.
Why don't they just make Justin fatter, writes? I came to this podcast through Andrew Heaton. I had never seen Justin until the election night stream. In my mind, based on his voice and temperament alone, I'd imagined him as a short guy with a beard and a very well-developed beer belly. For clothing, I was confident he'd be the kind of person that would wear a faded, ironic t-shirt with some sort of well-worn baseball cap from his favorite sports team to cover his balding. Boy, was I wrong. I had to laugh at how off base my guess was. This was one of the many laughs in an otherwise stressful night. Thank you guys for keeping me sane. That is the most backhanded way that I've ever heard that I was hot.
It's also really funny that they think that the way you dressed on election night is how you dress. Because when they said, like, a guy who wears a faded t-shirt and a baseball cap, I'm like, yep, that's my
Sometimes,
Justin.
yeah, sometimes, yeah. Heaton?
Hey, listener, thanks for coming over from me. Let me tell you, Justin's way fatter in person. What you saw was largely an optical illusion. And in reality, like usually they say the camera adds 20 pounds. For some reason, in Justin's case, he looks fit on television, but he is a fat sack of shit, and he's about 3 inches shorter. He was wearing Ron DeSantis heel pumps while he was on stage. He's just a chode. He's a fucking chode in person.
Yeah, he was also standing on phone books. You couldn't see that, but
yeah.
And this guy, there were 4 piñatas. We were supposed to break them all, and 3 of them were never broken and have never been seen again. So I think he's got them in his closet and he's just eating all the chocolate.
They're still on the
Nope,
set.
I know the answer to that. Justin lacked
I think
the
Fatty
upper
over here
body
is eating it
strength
all.
necessary
I did eat a
to
lot of
destroy the
chocolate.
last 3 piñatas. He just couldn't do it. He tried. We cut that bit out, but he couldn't knock him down with a bat.
I do need to figure out how to get this piñatas because, like, Brian was nice enough to let us use his set, but at a certain point, I do need to clear 5 pounds of chocolate candy out of his area. Why don't they make Justin and Heaton swap bodies? Writes, I only ever listen to the podcast. I saw your faces for the first time while watching the election coverage. Jen, you look exactly how you sound. Andrew, you sound like you should have Justin's body, and Justin, you sound like you should have Andrew's body.
That's weird.
Yeah.
I don't know how to take that. I don't know what that means.
No.
I'll say thank you. I guess I don't.
Yeah.
I guess I sound like I'm enormous. So
I want to know, this was a very neutral email. At no point did the email say that any of us look good or bad. Only
Exactly.
that Jen looks
That's
how she
nice.
sounds.
Yeah.
And that Justin and I should swap. So we'll see.
It is a very, very troubling Rorschach of an email for a bunch of people with performers' egos to be like, wait a minute, is that good or bad? Is that good or bad? Process it. It can only be one, good or bad.
yeah.
Quote, Trump made serious gains across historically democratic demographics, writes. In 2020, Biden won 81.3 million votes versus Trump 74.2 million. As of today, Harris has 70.9 million. Trump has 47.4 million. Trump's numbers have barely budged.
I mean, 74. You said 47.
Sorry, 74.7 million. Trump's numbers have barely budged, but Harris is showing over 10 million fewer than Biden. My interpretation is that Trump is equally popular as he was in 2020, but Harris is far less popular than Biden. That doesn't read as a gain for Trump as much as a loss for Democrats. Curious of your thoughts.
Those are my thoughts exactly.
Well, before we get into that, let's actually look at where it is now, because the problem is that everybody wanted to talk about the raw vote totals within 48 hours, like when the election was called as opposed to now.
I checked it this morning.
Yeah, let me also just say in general, California, Nevada, Arizona, what the fuck? Dude. Like, now's the time that I want to cement for everybody. It is a bad and dumb idea to allow mail ballots to be postmarked on election day.
Yeah.
Postmark them 3 days before. Have them counted immediately upon receipt, so they're announced on election day. You're always allowed to go in and vote. You're always allowed to surrender your mail ballot to a polling place. You can have early voting up until the day of, like, just, there's a million ways you can do this smarter. Everybody else does it smarter. And we are very annoyed that as we speak on Wednesday, California, a week and a day past election day, is 84% counted.
And that's because they allowed the ballots to come in for 20 days.
Yes.
Just bonkers.
It's not only annoying, it's how you get conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
Like, this is a problem. It's an active problem to democracy that people don't believe results. And it's like Eric Hovde in Wisconsin, who became, on the election denier train. Him and Bob Casey in Pennsylvania are brothers and saying like, well, I don't know if I'm going to agree with the, election results because they don't agree with how the votes came in, right? And it's like, just do this smarter. There's a way to do it smarter. Just do it. Anyway, right now, Kamala Harris has 72.5 million. Let's squint there. Donald Trump has 75.5 million. Donald Trump looks to be up 50.2 to Kamala Harris's 48.1. I have seen the votes that are going to come in are going to be disproportionately for Kamala Harris because they're coming from California, where she is currently winning 60-40 right now, which is really not all that much. That's crazy. That Donald Trump
isn't that wild?
Doing close to 40% in California. That being said, she's not going to end as far behind Joe Biden as before. This will be close to where we were in 2020, where I think it's understood that we had more ballots because of COVID and we had more mail-in balloting, stuff like that. I think that it's been overblown a little bit. There's a bunch of missing Democratic voters, but there's no argument to say that Kamala Harris did not electrify Democratic voters as she did less than John Kerry.
Yeah. I mean, she's still down 9 million from where Biden was. And Trump has gone up a little bit from his last election by about 1 million. But like, my conclusion, which I'm standing by, is that this country didn't get significantly Trumpier. I think that the Democrats didn't turn out the vote. That was the deciding factor, because with the numbers that Donald Trump has, if as many Democrats showed up in 2024 as did in 2020, he still would have lost.
Well, let me read this. Donald Trump is not more popular, writes. I'm so tired of seeing people claim Trump is more popular than ever and the country made a conservative swing to the right. Neither of these are true. Both metrics remain the same. People are making these claims based on raw percentages, including you, Justin, during the election night stream. However, the numbers are clear that turnout was down compared to 2020, especially on the left. The conservative percentage wins are higher, not because they got more votes, but because the overall pies are smaller. The left did not turn out to vote, and it trickled down the ballot. People opted not to vote across the board rather than simply not vote for president. The left needs to reengage demotivated voters, and they need to do it now. I don't disagree with any of the points there. The one thing that he said in the email was that Donald Trump is still a hard capped 48% candidate. Not true.
No.
Unfortunately for that position, Kamala Harris did do 49% in Pennsylvania, 48% in Michigan, 48% in Wisconsin. Those would be winning positions. So even in the lower pie, she still had a shot at the Electoral College. If Donald Trump was poisoned to independents, he wasn't poisoned to independents in the same way. He wasn't. He did take away from key Democratic constituencies that didn't not vote. They voted Republican, and that was a problem for Kamala Harris.
So I think you're both right, and we've seen this globally, like most recently in the United Kingdom, a very similar thing to what the listener points out, where the Labour vote was actually smaller in the most recent election compared to the previous one. So Jeremy Corbyn outperformed in terms of sheer votes Keir Starmer, the prime minister, right? So Labour won, and it won with less votes. How did that happen? It happened because a significant amount of voters that had previously voted for the Conservative Party voted for the Reform Party of Nigel Farage. So first past the polls, they ended up winning. I'm happy to concede that might very well be the kind of thing that happened this one, not with a spoiler candidate, but rather with a lack of enthusiasm. But the thing that we should bring up is that even if the overall victory is on account of people not being excited of Kamala Harris and not voting for her in the same amount, which I'm fine to accept as what happened, like do keep in mind that Trump made gains in every ethnic minority and I think pretty much every demographic that we can talk about, like suburban, urban, rural. Like he did increase gains in every relevant demographic. So even if it's not Trump is super popular, he is more popular than he was. He is more popular in groups that are associated with Democrats, and that can happen alongside a general lack of enthusiasm for Kamala Harris as well.
Heaton, please cover sports, writes. There's a developing situation in a city that I live in, Cleveland, Ohio, and I think Heaton would find it interesting. The Cleveland Browns lease is coming up on their current Lakeside Stadium in downtown Cleveland. It is in dire need of a remodel, but the current site does not have room for expansion. The city has offered to pay for about half of the remodel, but during the negotiations, the owners decided that they really wanted a dome. But the only way to build that from scratch is on a bigger site. They want to build a whole complex with a dome at an old Ford factory right by the airport. Problem is, that is not technically the city of Cleveland. It's in the suburb of Brook Park. They were toying with the idea for a while, but then they announced that they were going to move to Brook Park and build the new dome. Let me just add, fuck the Brook Park Browns. But here's where things get interesting. Cleveland is very butthurt from the mid-90s when owner Art Modell sold the team out from underneath the city to become the Baltimore Ravens. We were robbed of a Super Bowl win in 2000. The state of Ohio passed a law named the Art Modell Law that if the owner of a sports team that is housed in a stadium that was funded by taxpayer subsidies tries to move the team outside of said city, the city or its citizens can sue to force the sale of the team from the owners to the city or a group of citizen investors. Sure, if you want free money for your brand new sports stadium until it limits the freedom of what you can do with your team, Heaton, this does feel like the closest that you're ever going to get to a natural interest in a relevant sports story.
Yeah, I like this Art Modell law of which you speak. I think I have complete faith in the market to be able to create stadiums for very popular sporting events. I don't think this is anything that ever actually requires subsidies to exist. It might help in order to move from one place to another. I don't really think so. I think the owners are always fucking bilking you. They were going to move there anyway, and they figured out how to get money from you. Money that could have either been sent back to taxpayers or put on social services. Either one I would be better for. If you're going to do it, if you're going to have your city pay billionaires to do a thing they were already going to do, again, I advise you not to do it. But if you're going to do it, I would require that they do so by purchasing stock in the company rather than just giving a handout to a billionaire. Like if you're gonna build the stadium, figure out how much the stadium costs, $3 billion or whatever. Purchase that much stock in the company so that your city owns it. Again, not my preference. I don't think this is anything the government ever needs to do under any circumstance. But if you're going to do it, yeah, make it socialist as opposed to fascist.
All right, let's get into the Trump fears. We did a list of Trump fears last week. We asked for ones that we did not get to, and so we have had not only emails to Jen, because Jen ran it on Congressional Dish, but we got a ton of emails. Let's start with the one that came in the most, and that is trans fears. I'm a trans man planning to apply to medical school next year. I don't know where I will live in 2026 because it's such a numbers game when you're admitted during the process, but I'm afraid of losing my access to testosterone. Trans women can buy hormones easily through international pharmacies, but testosterone is difficult to buy without a prescription due to the felony status ascribed from buying testosterone due to a bill Joe Biden sponsored 20 years ago, which I'm guessing was probably an anti-steroid bill that had nothing to do with trans healthcare per se. But that we got a lot of LGBTQ and specifically trans fears. Jen.
Yeah, so when it comes to the specific question about where to get testosterone, it sounds like what you really just need is a prescription, which I can recommend. It's only in 28 states right now, but like Ways to Well is one of those like online, you get virtual visits and they have people that can prescribe things to you.
The fear is that it would be made illegal.
Well, I mean, I think that's just one of those fears that I'm not seeing any evidence of. You could also, like, if that were to happen, you could go to other countries, like go to Mexico. They actually have a pretty good trans services tourism industry already. So there are ways to do it. But I think right now we have to look at specifically what Trump has said. And since he won the election, he did put out a video and he was very specific about what their plans are. So I am going down the things that he said in that video that are his plans. So first, he said that he wants to create an executive order to tell federal agencies to stop promoting transition issues. And then he had some requests for Congress. So even Trump is saying that he can't just do this. This is something Congress would have to do. He would ask Congress to defund the procedures. Now, there's already a law in place like that for abortion. There's no federal money going to abortion. And so this doesn't end the procedures. It just wouldn't allow tax money to do it. He would also ask Congress to prohibit transgender surgeries, which he calls genital mutilation, for minors. And the punishment for doctors that would perform the surgeries is that they would get kicked out of Medicare or Medicaid, which again is not throwing them in prison. I think a lot of doctors would choose not to because it would be a significant portion of some of their income if they were to lose that, but that's not like jail time. And it's only for minors, so not an attack on transgender people in general, but
Adults,
for
yeah.
children. And I do have to say that, like, I've been thinking about this a lot because I am also getting the emails about this. Just in general, like, I remember a girl, I met her when I was 6 years old, who just kind of was a dude. Like, she wanted to be on the football team and was just like very masculine. And back then, like, transitioning just like wasn't a thing. And so I've always wondered, like, what happened to this girl. So I looked her up. Not only is she still a woman, but she had a whole thing online about how she had a difficult pregnancy and like all the things she had to do in order to have a child. And I just kind of wonder, like, if when she was younger and was a teenager and was trying to be one of the boys, like, had she had this option and done something permanent, like, would she have regretted it? And so one of the reasons I say that is that Trump also said that he would want to ask Congress to allow lawsuits so that people who were minors when they got these surgeries and then come to regret it, so that they could sue those doctors, because it's a real thing that some people do regret it. He also asked for investigations into pharmaceutical companies that are marketing of drugs, and he says that are used illegally for transitions. I don't really know what he's saying about that, but he's saying investigations, not like bans or anything. And then he also said that he would have Department of Education investigations for civil rights violations if school officials suggest transitioning to minors.
How are they going to do that when they eliminate the Department of Education?
Exactly. I actually have that in my notes. And so that's another thing that we have to keep in mind here. This is Donald Trump we're talking about. So he's even contradicting himself within 24 hours, because like he did the I'm eliminating the Department of Education video, and then in the very next video, or like one of the next ones, he does this one where he's talking about things he's going to order the agency that he's eliminating to do.
Maybe that'll be the last thing they do before they turn out the lights.
Yeah, so his specific recommendations when it comes to this issue is not banning the procedures. They're definitely concerned about doing this to children. I do think there's a compromise here that maybe we could have as a society. But yeah, I'm not seeing him making all that many promises about him himself. A lot of this is asking Congress, and a lot of this is not going to be something Congress wants to get into. So I think that my biggest concern when it comes to the trans community is that there might be some emboldening of shitty people who are mean to trans people. But as for the laws changing, I don't think there's all that much to fear here. You'll want to pay more attention to Congress than to Trump. But I've been paying attention to Congress very, very closely for a long time. This is not an issue that they are passionate about.
I think the biggest thing that I see is that Donald Trump's campaign spent the most money that they spent on any issue with a series of ads that targeted Kamala Harris, saying that she was for taxpayer-funded sex change surgeries for prisoners.
Yeah.
I read that as, and I think as the campaign postmortems are coming out, that this was kind of a magic incantation of sorts that painted Kamala Harris as an out-of-touch, unserious liberal. I don't think that it was necessarily an attack on trans people in general, but I don't blame any trans person for seeing it as an attack on them. That being said, I broadly agree with Jen. I would say the one thing that I do see a lot of political momentum on is anything involving kids. And so that would be specifically puberty blockers, and it would be gender reassignment surgery for under 18 for minors. That is where the political headwinds are going. And so if those are things that you find to be a cornerstone of your existence, then yes, I do think that like puberty blockers and gender reassignment surgery for minors is something that will come under more fire in the Trump administration than in the Biden administration.
Yeah.
Beyond that, I don't I don't particularly see that even the culture war right has a sense of like testosterone shipments to trans people. That is just not something that I hear. Not to say that it doesn't exist. Not to say that you can't find certain people.
Not to adults anyway.
Yeah.
The broy side of this is very pro testosterone in general. So you're not going to find people that want to stop testosterone from being pumped into the American male. The people that are most likely to go after transgenders are also the folks that like want testosterone supplements. So they would have to be very targeted and very surgical for that to happen. And I agree with both of my colleagues in their analysis.
Chinese fears writes, there's one big topic you didn't get to, which is one concern that Trump, that I actually lose sleep over. So many of my closest people in my life are first or second generation Chinese immigrants. And as relations worsen between the two superpower countries, I worry about the large chance for an increase in prejudice and potentially violence given growing hate crime statistics against Asian Americans, and the small but sadly growing chance of a government reprisal on ethnically Chinese Americans and immigrants. Heaton?
Yeah, I think you should be worried about declining relationships between us and China. I am worried about trade relations with China, but I've spoken at length about that on this program, so I won't relitigate it at this time. I am a lot less, granted, I don't have skin in the game here, but I'm a lot less worried about that happening domestically for a couple of reasons. I don't think that you're apt to see Trump going after ethnically Chinese people in the United States just qua racism or as a way to get back against China. I think that's a little too far in terms of what's likely to happen. The other thing that I would add is it is entirely possible that hate crimes have gone up against Asian Americans, that's something that we need to be alarmed at. I have heard that as well, but I haven't looked into the numbers. And so I'm taking them with a grain of salt only because there were statistical problems with similar language that happened during the Trump administration last time. So broadly speaking, not specifically Asians, but in general, there were increases in hate crimes during the Trump administration previously, but when you looked into how those numbers were aggregated, there were several agencies which previously had not been required to report hate crimes that were afterwards required to report hate crimes. So 2015, X agencies were not reporting hate crimes. 2016, they started reporting hate crimes. People looked at that and went, look, there's been a massive increase in hate crimes. Not understanding that you're going to get an increase in hate crimes if you have more agencies reporting hate crimes. Did they go up? They might very well have gone up in general, but there was some misleading statistical analysis there. The other thing that I would be curious about is whether the increase in Asian hate crimes coincided with the rise in crime that we saw in 2020 and 2021 in general, if it was out of sync with crimes in general, and it was interpreted as hate crimes because the people in them were Asian. I don't know. Again, it's possible that all of that is increasing. I don't mean to sweep it under the rug. All I'm trying to do is offer some possible venues to make people less afraid that are directly affected by that.
I am less afraid of a war. Please clip this when I'm drafted into the military. But like, I am less afraid about a war with China today than I was 8 years ago. I believe that with the Chinese economy having hit its ceiling and now they are looking at bailouts and stuff to keep things afloat, we are not at the point where we are thinking about China becoming the world's largest economy at any time soon. They've had, it's hard to tell exactly what's happening in China because they don't have a free press, but you've seen scandals of members of the Chinese military being unpersoned and thrown into the shadow realm because their military has been pilfered and they're selling off stuff for money. It is showing all the hallmarks of a command economy. It is showing all the hallmarks of a communist military. And I believe that they need America now more than ever. They need American money. They need American manufacturing. They need American trade more than ever. Now, they are always at a threat to, blockade Taiwan. But I am, everything I have seen makes me less afraid. That being said, when we last had the hashtag Stop Asian Hate thing was during the pandemic, and it was something that I saw very, very clearly in Oakland, where a lot of the most horrific cases were happening. And they were not happening because people were mad about the virus coming from Wuhan. It wasn't a bunch of MAGA people that were coming out and assaulting Asian people because they were mad about stuff that they saw on television. It was nearly universally poor people from East and West Oakland that were coming to Chinatown and robbing people that were older Chinese merchants because they knew that they were too proud to call the cops. That's why it was happening. It was because of lockdowns. It was because of poverty that was brought on by lockdowns and the poverty that was already existing in East and West Oakland, that the softest place where you could rob somebody was an old Chinese person in Chinatown in downtown Oakland. It was as simple as that. We can oftentimes get wrapped up in stuff, but I am not particularly afraid of that particular issue.
And the only thing I'll add to that is I think that when you're looking at mass deportations, an immigrant is an immigrant. So there are Chinese immigrants that have been coming to the southern border and coming into this country. I think they're in just as much danger as anyone else who's here is undocumented. But I don't think that's like a specific targeted things to Chinese people. I think no matter who you are, if you don't have a document to be here, you're on the target list.
It's going to get a little dicier.
Yeah.
Government employee fears, writes, Trump admin will implement Schedule F and fire a bunch of civil servants working on existential unknown risks. I worry specifically that this will cease work on what Michael Lewis called the fifth risk style projects, which only government can fund. Heaton.
I think that if you're a federal employee, the Trump administration is going to try to irritate you. I think that that's a given. One of the first things that the Trump administration did coming in 2016 was try to relocate a bunch of federal agencies to other locations. They didn't seem to be doing it as part of the Heaton Federal Diaspora Project that I advocate for. Rather, what they seemed to be doing was trying to get senior people that were difficult to fire to not want to move to a new location to get them to quit. So they wouldn't outright fire them, or they couldn't outright fire them, but they thought that maybe they could irritate them enough that they would resign and they wouldn't have to restaff the position, or they could staff the position with somebody at lower pay. They're I think going to want to implement Schedule F. So I don't think it's going to be the massive layoff that the Republicans and the Libertarians are rooting for. I don't think they quite realize just how intransigent the civil service will be in this regard, but they will irritate them as best they can to try and get them out. Insofar as the project that you mentioned goes, I don't know that specific project, but I will say based on prior administrative experience, Trump's position on defense projects and defense spending appears to be spend more money but don't use it. So even though he's talking about not getting us into more wars or winding us down in terms of our international obligations, that's not coming down alongside a general reduction in defense spending. He seems to, if I'm going to try to articulate the Trump position, it's have a really big stick and use it as a threatening presence. So I don't know that project explicitly would have any reason to fear being on the chopping block.
Well, and the last time, look, let me say this about Michael Lewis. I think Michael Lewis is a fine author. I've enjoyed many of his books. His last book was talking about how Sam Bankman-Fried was an absolute brilliant genius, and then he had to rewrite it at the last moment. So take Michael Lewis with a little bit of a grain of salt. That being said, the last time that Michael Lewis was screaming and yelling about the government's need, it was during the pandemic, about how we needed to be paying more attention to the plan that was laid out by George W. Bush for a pandemic response, which was lockdowns, which I think we have seen we could probably take a better look at if the same thing were to happen again. So, we'll see.
I don't know who Michael Lewis is, so.
Moneyball.
Yeah, me neither.
Yeah.
Really?
I mean, I saw the movie, but I don't
the guy who
like
wants
the
Jerry
A's.
Springer car crash television is the only guy who reads nonfiction.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not an A's fan, so I don't give a fuck how they.
Well, no, he's not. That was like his only sports book.
Well, it's the only book that you named to me, so I don't know.
He also wrote The Big Short.
Oh, I liked that movie.
Yeah, didn't have Margot Robbie in it.
Yeah.
The book didn't. Student loan fears writes, on that note, do you think Republicans will be able to eliminate the public service loan forgiveness program? I'm 7 out of 10 years into my 120 qualifying payments. I made my borrowing, career, and financial plans specifically because of this program's existence. I'm not sure if it's Congress or a Department of Education thing. Also, since it potentially cost savings for the government, it could get included in a reconciliation bill. Yes, appreciate your thoughts.
I'm pretty sure that was a congressionally mandated program. I don't think that's something that the Biden administration pulled out their asses, because that's been around for a while,
No,
right?
no, that's been around
Yeah.
for a while. Yeah.
I don't think that one's...
It's administered by the Department of Education, though.
Yeah, it's administered by the Department of Education, but I've never seen that one on the chopping block in Congress. I don't think that's going to be a priority. Like, the reconciliation bills are going to be used first and foremost for tax cuts.
The tax cuts.
Like, that's what they want it for. They want tax cuts.
They're going to make the Trump tax cuts permanent.
Yeah. And anything that's messing with people who are doing public service, like, there's going to be a huge outcry for that. It's only going to slow down their tax cuts, so they're not going to do it. While we're on the topic of education, though, I do want to warn people that right now, with the Biden administration's attempt to forgive student loans, there's an injunction against that. And so right now, the Department of Education has basically put everyone who applied for forgiveness under forbearance. This has been the case since August, which means that there are no payments required right now and no interest accruing. If this is not a done deal, if the court doesn't say that the forgiveness can go forward by January 20th, it's not happening.
It ain't.
Yeah. So if I had student loans, what I would be doing is taking advantage of the fact that there's no interest accruing, and I'd be paying down that principal as much as I can before it starts accruing again. That would be my strategy. But I think you can pretty much count that as being gone. And we've mentioned it a couple times. So, like, let's get it out of the way. The Department of Education. First, let's just talk about what the Department of Education is. This is something that is barely older than the three of us. It has only existed since 1979, and it essentially was a splitting up of the Department of Education and Health and Human Services. Before that, there was just one agency that did both things. Right now, the Department of Education's main two jobs is to allocate about 10%-ish of the public school funding. Most public school funding comes from more local sources than the Department of Education, and it also investigates civil rights violations, two tasks that could easily be done if it was pushed off into a different department. That said, Congress Watcher here, there's a man named Tom Massey. He's a Republican of Kentucky who's been trying to get rid of the Department of Education every year since the 115th Congress. He started this in 2017. And so every year he introduces the same bill to get rid of the Department of Education. In the 115th Congress, it had 12 co-sponsors, all Republicans. The next Congress, 12 co-sponsors, all Republicans. 117th Congress, 20 co-sponsors, all Republicans, and in this Congress, 33 Republican co-sponsors, which I bring up to let you know there is no real momentum for this to happen. So Donald Trump can say that he wants to do it all he wants, but this has to be done by Congress. Congress isn't going to do it. So if you care about the Department of Education that much, I think it's pretty safe.
Vance Fears, right?
I would be. By the way, I would be open to gutting it for many of the reasons that Jen just said. I don't think she probably agrees with me on this, but it's not that old. It's not the principal source of educational funding for school districts. You could make a pretty compelling case to me, I think, that it would be better just to take the $238 billion in the Department of Education and send every school district in America $4 million. I would be open to it. I'm not holding my breath on all this. I know people that are really, really excited that Trump is in because this is their bête noire. They want to get at the Thomas Masseys of the world. I think that for the Thomas Masseys of the world, the most they're likely to accomplish is shrinking some of the Department of Education. But I don't think it's going to be eliminated as a federal department.
I just think the focus on it is so weird. It does so little.
It's like a bumper sticker.
Yeah.
It is, especially for liberals, it is the idea of how dumb can we get? We're eliminating the Department of Education. It's a easy punchline for the idea that idiocracy is coming. And so I agree. It is a nutritious element of you listening to this show. If that is something that you are inclined to think, to understand, this doesn't really do much. It has a very, very nice name for something that doesn't really do a ton, but does hire a bunch of people, and those people would get fired. So there is that.
And has a pretty big budget. Which is why I'm looking at it. Is $238 billion, I think, could be better allocated, even if we just want to use
Jesus Christ, really?
Return it to taxpayers, we don't want to go with the deficit. That's the back of the envelope math that I saw. Somebody correct me on that, feel free, but it's several $billion that I think would probably just
God.
be better as
That
Imagine-
sounds really high. I don't know.
Imagine the amount of stadiums I could build for that.
Let
with
me
public money.
right now,
God,
'cause
that'd
I
be
agree, that
awesome.
does-
I'll look at the funding law when it comes out, but that seems high.
Well, while we're figuring that out, Vance Fears writes, my feeling on him is that he's power hungry, that he will do whatever it takes to keep power and increase it. I can see him somehow arranging that he would invoke the 25th Amendment to take over the presidency from Trump. We met this dude 11 minutes ago. Nobody knew who the fuck JD Vance was, or they loved him because he did the Hillbilly Elegy book. Like 2 years ago. 2 years ago, he came on the scene. And look, it is a remarkable rocketing to power. Nixonian, one might say, in terms of him going from senator to vice president. Didn't spend a lot of time in the chamber, but take a beat.
Yeah,
Take a beat. Take a beat on old Jance Dance Vance.
I think we're getting to the point now that some of the people that are terrified kind of want to be terrified.
Wow,
Like,
there's that.
there's a lot of just, because I've gotten so much negative feedback from telling people it's going to be okay. Like, just text message after text message and message after message,
How
just being
dare
like,
you.
these are all the
Jim,
reasons
why
that
aren't
it's
you
not
sitting
okay.
Shiva? Yeah.
No, exactly. Like,
We're angrier.
yeah, like
We
people.
should be yelling.
Yeah. It's been a week. I was tolerant of it for a few days, but like, let's deal with what's actually happening in the present moment. Because if you're going to be afraid of every possibility for the next 4 years, you're going to be real unhealthy for the next 4 years, and you're going to make us fucking nuts. So just let's start to calm down now. Like, let's deal. Like I said, this man is not in power until January 20th. So this level of panic, even right now, like, it's just enough. Let's stop it.
I am 100% with Jen on this. I don't think that there's any benefit to being terrified or sad. I am fairly Buddhist and stoical in my outlook in general, that if you can avoid adding unnecessary suffering to your life, that's a good thing. In my case, I've got a little bit of pushback on how glib I've been or how not sad I've been. And my response is, please explain to me how I will do a better job if I'm terrified or I'm sad, because I think that would impact my analysis and it would make me worse. And I think it would make me less effective in the job that I do because people would write me off. So I don't think there's any benefit to me doing it. And just in general, I don't absolutely go hard on bad policy. Absolutely be passionate, fight things that you think are an injustice and that you think are incompetent. I'm not saying to like roll over, but needless suffering is a dumb thing to do. When we were doing the show on last Tuesday night, mostly overwhelmingly positive feedback on the show, and thank you for everybody that turned in and watched it that we were doing with Justin. But like, I did get one message that was like, glad you're having a fun time as an unthreatened white male. And I read that and was like, first of all, the Democratic Party should send me a fucking certificate for not becoming a Trump supporter when I receive bullshit like that. Like, what are you trying to get people to vote for Trump? Is that your goal? Is this like a very clever Steve Bannon? But the other bit too is like, you know, I'm a comedian. I'm going to make jokes. Like, don't watch me if you don't want me to make jokes. That's how that works.
Yeah,
By the way,
and
I have
to
an
just
update
back
on the
you up.
federal education budget.
Well, hold on just a second. Just to back you up on
sorry.
what you said about like the effect on our work, it actually happened to me. When Trump won in 2016, I didn't know how to handle it. I panicked, and I'm really not all that proud of the work that I did, especially in the first year of the Trump administration. Eventually, when we got the Mueller report and there were the impeachments, like, I'm very proud of the work I did analyzing those things because I was calmer at that point. But when I was really panicked, I was focusing on who is he appointing to all these positions. I did whole episodes on individuals, which is not something I generally do. It did affect my work in a negative way, and I think that's why I'm going out of my way to be calm right now. But I also think, like, just to give you a little bit of the pessimism that you seek, I think one of the other reasons that I'm calm is I've just kind of accepted at this point, because it's been studied and proven that we're in an oligarchy right now. Like, no matter which party wins, it is serving corporate interests and very, very rich people. And so I'm just looking at different players kind of serving the same interests. And so I'm not going to freak out over different billionaires being served compared to the Kamala billionaires. Like, I'm just very, I think things accelerate when Republicans have all three branches of government because they're, quite frankly, shameless about it in their legislation. I do think they're going to get the tax cuts. I would bet my life on it. So
as opposed to the famously moderate Democrats, for which Pramila Jayapal said, "Oh no, now I'm against the filibuster being taken away."
Yeah.
And when asked why, because we don't have the chamber.
yeah.
If we had the chamber, I'd be for it, but we don't, so I'm against it. And it's like, oh, I guess we're just not even going to invent a reason now. We're just going to just totally say like, oh yeah, no, we just want to totally take the rules away when we're in charge, and we want to put them back when you're in charge.
I've seen hypocrisy. I've seen both parties not really serving my interests. So it's just like, okay. So what my job, I think, is to tell you, and all of us, I think we feel this way, is to tell you how this is most likely going to affect you, or the things that we're seeing in real time. We're going to inform you. Like, I read the Inflation Reduction Act and I told you could get your washer dryer paid for. Like, there's real things in legislation that will affect you. Or when they do the tax cuts, that's going to affect your pocketbook too. So there's real news happening here. I consider that my job. But freaking out does none of us any good. And Andrew's dead right. The three of us, if we were panicking right now, we'd be doing you a disservice as well.
We're going to bring it on home with Supreme Court fears. Supreme Court fears writes, my largest concern.
Real quick, Justin.
Oh, yeah. Go ahead.
I apologize. I just want to say I misspoke earlier. You both were correct. I overstated the size of the federal budget. I think I said the Department of Education was $243 billion. That was high. It is $238 billion. So it is merely $238 billion. Yep.
But is most of that going to public school funding?
No. About half of it goes to Pell Grants and subsidizing student loans. So that's about 50% of it. About a fifth of it is Title I grants, and then the remaining bit, which would be like 20% in total, is special education and other. About 10% is other. So a maximum of 20%. A maximum.
If you would eliminate that amount of money going into student loans, I guarantee you that a lot of these colleges would start figuring out that maybe their coursework is not quite as valuable as they were thinking it was, because part of the reason why you continue to see escalating costs from these institutions is because they know the federal government is guaranteeing it.
But I mean, the idea of getting rid of the Department of Education and seeing that line item go away, it's just not going to happen, because there's lots of parents that want their kids to go to school. And so it's just going to get shifted over to some other agency and spent. So I think the whole get rid of Department of Education movement is stupid. And then the freak out over it is stupid as well. I really don't think it would have that much of an effect. It would just be unnecessary busy work to reshuffle the government.
All right. Supreme Court fears writes, my largest concern would be the Supreme Court replacing Justice Thomas and Justice Alito with younger ideologically and really enshrining their majority for 20 years. We've done a lot of poo-pooing a lot of the fears. This shit is happening. Not only are they going to replace them with two people that are younger, they might clone them. They might actually, they might have cloned both of them, and they're just going to put exact younger versions of themselves on the bench.
Doesn't Scalia actually have a kid?
Oh, maybe.
He does, he has multiple children, although I think like one's a priest, and I don't think
But I think one is like politically involved.
Probably. He had like 6 kids or something like that. Yeah. If you're really worried about Republican Supreme Court justices, Justin's absolutely right. I think there's an excellent chance that 2 Republican justices will retire while Trump is in office. I think there's a pretty good chance that Sotomayor will retire or die. So I would, if I'm betting money, I would bet that Trump gets three Supreme Court picks over the course of his tenure.
You take the over on 2.5. Wow.
Why do you think Sotomayor is about to die? Is she sick?
She's 70 and has diabetes and has to travel with a dialysis machine.
Oh, that's not good.
Yeah, it's not good. And there's also like increasing scuttle around the edges of people going, maybe she should step down. Part of that, no doubt, is fear that she will die. Or that she would die before another Democrat came in, so that might go off. But part of that also might be concerns about cognitive abilities. I have no way to discern that. I just know that there have been more people talking about she needs to step down in general. So I think it's a possibility.
There is talk about like, hey, she should drop out now, resign now, and then they ram through a younger liberal justice. Because the fear is, it's like, okay,
Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
Yeah, it's Ruth Bader Ginsburg because, like, all right, let's say it's Trump now, but let's say Dance goes well and now he gets to run. And now it's like you on the outside, the fears are it's not 4 years. It could be 12.
Ooh. Like, I don't know. We hear about the Supreme Court all the time. Like the thing that people were afraid of on the blue side of the aisle, it's already happened. They have the majority. Yeah. So, okay.
I agree. And I'll add to that as well. Like, keep in mind that with the Supreme Court, and I do Judge Week every year on the show. I went through the Supreme Court decisions. I agree with the majority 60 to 70% of the time. So while I'm not angry at all the Republican justices being on there, I frequently disagree with them, and very strongly, really all the church state stuff I disagree with them on. So I'm a call it as you see it type umpire, and even then, like there's lots of things that one of the justices will pop off and not do what the majority wants. Like half of my state is now Indian territory, according to Gorsuch, who authored the decision. That is not something that we would have predicted from a Republican judge. The other thing I'll add is that, as heavily vetted as these are, there are lots of surprises that happen when you report Supreme Court justices on a regular basis. Like Kennedy was appointed by a conservative. He turned out to be, a swing vote. Souter, I think, was appointed by a conservative, turned out to be a reliably progressive vote on the court. A lot of the Supreme Court picks that you think are going to go one way end up going in a different direction. They're not myrmidons. So, yes, if you're worried about Supreme Court justices, you should worry that there should be 2 or 3, but they're not. They're not robots that get dropped in to do the will of the Republican Party or the Democratic Party either way.
Well, we will see going forward. But until next time, for Andrew Heaton and Jen Briney, I'm Justin Robert Young, reminding you, dear listener, that we're not wrong.
The end. Don't do it. Don't do it.
But you are.
Damn it!
No!